Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Silver Soldier Amby kit is finally out, so let's talk about it. But before I go over her kit, we have some additional information about 1.6 characters. They appear to have a new ability called Additional Attacks. This is not a new damage type, an ability skipped the original damage type listed. Do note that this can be heavily subject to change, because when I go over Silver Soldier Amby kit, you will see the mentions of these follow-up attacks. This is the machine translation, but actually it is called Additional Attacks. So just as a heads up, so you won't be confused as much as we go over the kit. But basically, Silver Soldier Amby seems to be very simple and straightforward to play. Honestly, I'm surprised that this was not the character being given for free, but just because she's much more simpler to use than Harumasa. So I find it very interesting that this type of character with a very simple, straightforward kit is not being the free character for new players. But nevertheless, let's begin with the kit analysis. Once again, just as a heads up, if you're just pausing the video to read things on the screen, this is machine translation. Things might not be correctly translated, but I do know the correct word. So for example, if it says follow-up attack, it actually means additional ability, and so on. We'll begin first with her basic attack. She has up to 4 consecutive slashes with her basic attack, and landing hit will charge the mark. This is effectively her gimmick or part of the kit, and this mark itself will have several stacks. So you mark these enemies up, and whenever you hit the marked enemies, you can charge these stacks up to 3 times. When the mark is fully charged, it will be activated, which will allow the special skill Radiant Slash to be used. Also, the special skill Radiant Slash will consume this one activated mark to deal bonus electric damage, and it is also categorized as a follow-up attack damage. Like I said, it's actually additional damage. As already mentioned, it seems that this additional attack is not a new type of damage. Of course, it's still subject to change. Also, uncharged or inactive marks cannot recharge. When Amby is off field, marks are hidden. Also, her stagger multiplier, or should I say days multiplier, is actually not that low actually, which is quite interesting, and she does seem to have quite a decent amount of days within her kit. Also, her mark itself, whenever you activate it, the activated mark that is with 3 stacks, also seems to have a relatively high days multiplier. Now let's go quickly over her dodge. Your typical dodge, nothing special, but you can do look at the multipliers. The days multiplier, I believe it's also relatively high for the dodge counter for an attack unit. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is not as low. Now let's talk about her special and X special skill. Her special skill, Radiant Slash, whenever a target mark is activated, you press this to execute, dash forward, pass through enemies, dealing electric damage, and each hit will consume one of these activated marks to deal the bonus electric damage. This move is repeatable until you consume all of these activated marks on enemies. Also, you do have complete invulnerability while active while you're doing these slashes, so that's also very comfortable and convenient, I would say. Her X special skill, Thunderstorm Slash, you do hold this skill if you have enough energy. It costs 60 energy, and then she will perform lots of fast attacks by the looks of it that will deal heavy electric damage, and also these hits will rapidly charge the mark. You also have invulnerability during the execution of this move. So as you can see with Amby, it's pretty much straightforward. Use the basic and X special attacks to mark the target. You charge up the mark up to 3 for each hit, and once fully charged, she can use her special attack, Radiant Slash, to consume these marks for her additional attacks. It's very straightforward, and like I said, I believe this character would be perfect given for free to new players over Harumasa, simply because it's simpler to play than Harumasa. Also, I'm not implying that she's bad or anything like that. I believe she will end up being pretty good because this is only V0 or V1, whatever you want to call it. She will definitely receive further adjustments and will have probably higher numbers as well, so I wouldn't stress too much about the numbers. This video is more about just understanding how this character functions. Now let's go over her chain attack. Chain attack, typical, usual stuff. However, her ultimate will add an activated mark to targets, granting invulnerability during execution. Now let's also quickly go over her assist. Typical stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. Like I said, once again, I don't recommend focusing too much on the multipliers, but her days multiplier for the assist follow-up seems to be relatively high. And speaking of days multiplier, her core skill has some days multiplier increases within it. So the core passive increases her damage by 20% to enemies that are marked with the mark, and when any teammate performs additional attacks on a marked enemy, their critical damage is increased by 30% of Amby's critical damage. So the more critical damage you have on Amby, the more damage will your teammates do with their additional attacks. Do note that I believe also Trigger should have additional attacks within her kit, so it should synergize quite well with her. And I believe also Pulchra has it. I will also have videos about those two characters. Feel free to subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much. It does help me a lot. Smile. And now let's go over her passive effect. If you have a stun unit or a character from the same faction, hitting marked enemies will increase days value by 15%. So this will also improve your team at stunning the enemies faster. We also have some information regarding her Mindscape, so I'll quickly go over them. I might confuse some words here and there because of the machine translation, but let's begin with Mindscape 1. Gain 20 resonance. I believe this is decibels for each additional attack, and activating the ultimate restores 6 mark charges. So we'll be able to consume more mark charges much faster for a special attack. And also special skill Radiant Slash consumes charges instead of mark. So this effectively changes how Radiant Slash works, that you're not consuming marks anymore, but you're consuming charges. It will also imply that perhaps first you consume the charges, and then once you run out of these charges, you consume the mark. I'm not sure, but it does seem to be an interesting Mindscape. Her Mindscape 2, additional attacks, damage increased by 40%. I assume this is only for herself, not for the entire team. Enhanced special attacks and chain attacks consume all activated marks, dealing damage for each. Actually, now that I look at this Mindscape 2, I guess you do not consume marks anymore because of Mindscape 1, and you do actually get to consume them if you have Mindscape 2. Yeah, I see with Mindscape 2 and 1, she probably ends up being much stronger, but I believe even at base kit she's gonna be fine. Mindscape 4 ignores 50% electric damage resistance for enemies that have the activated mark, and Mindscape 6, for every 6 activated marks consumed, you trigger an electromagnetic vortex that deals 2000% attacks directly damage to surrounding enemies. Typical M6 stuff. We also have some information regarding her V engine, her signature, so we'll also go over that. Her signature at phase 1 will provide a 48% critical damage increase advanced stat, base attack 713. Critical damage also from the passive is increased by 40%. Do remember that her core skill increases your teammates' additional attack damage based on 30% of her critical damage. So the more critical damage on Amby you can get, the more damage it's also going to improve your entire team, not just herself. Also, whenever the wearer of this V engine launches a normal attack, special skill, or additional attack to hit the enemy, they gain 1 layer of benefit buff effect, whatever you want to call it, and each stack of this benefit buff increases the wearer critical damage by an additional 10%. So you can push an extra 30% critical damage on top of already the 40 plus the 48, which is quite a lot of critical damage. Also, whenever you have 3 layers stacked, it does last for 30 seconds, and the duration of each layer of this effect is calculated separately, and it can be triggered at most once in the same move. When there are 3 layers of this benefit effect buff, the wearer electric attribute damage is increased by 20%. I would say that Amby V engine seems pretty strong and will definitely improve her further. How useful would this be for some other characters? It does provide a lot of critical damage. Obviously, the 20% electric damage boost would not be valuable just for anybody, but it definitely seems to be an interesting testing the engine. So overall with Silver Soldier Amby, she basically works like this. You hit an enemy with basic and X special attacks to charge this mark up to 3 stacks. At 3 mark stacks, you will gain activated mark. Then you perform the regular special attack on activated mark enemies to consume mark and trigger additional attacks until these marks are consumed. Ult will also add activated mark straight to the enemy. Civil Soldier Amby will also deal 20% damage more by herself to enemies that are affected by the mark, and also critical damage percentage dealt by all additional attacks in the team are increased by 30% of Silver Soldier Amby critical damage, and an additional, once again, it does provide a 50% days dealt by the team to enemies that are being affected by the mark. So as you can see, Amby is very straightforward to play. I believe Amby will turn out to be fine. Personally, I like the simplicity because not everybody wants to have super complex characters, and once again, I firmly believe this type of character would be so much better for new players, like being even free, compared to something like Harumasi, which is much more harder / complex to actually play it properly. But that is just me. I'm personally very looking forward to Amby. The simplicity, for me, it's something that I do personally enjoy. I don't always want to play the most sweaty characters, and I like having something as an option of being simple. And once again, like I already mentioned, we'll also have trigger and pulcra videos on my channel, so make sure to subscribe if you like to see that stuff. I also do cover Honky Star Rail besides ZZZ. And of course, if you want to add anything or you have any questions, feel free to write it within down comments below, or you can drop by my stream. I stream every single day on Twitch / YouTube. And yeah, that's about it. I wish you a wonderful day and see you in the next video.